Now, as we all know, the 90s was filled with plenty of rivalries. Notable ones being the Bulls versus the Jazz, the Knicks versus the Pacers, and the Knicks versus the Bulls. And so far, if you haven't been able to, now you should be able to tell that the Knicks had a lot of enemies in the NBA throughout the 90s. From the John Starks trash talk to their rugged and physical defensive style that they were known for, under the coaching of Jeff Van Gundy, the team placed a heavy emphasis on defense and they often used aggressive tactics to disrupt opponents' offensive flow. And oftentimes, as you can imagine, opponents did not like this at all. And one of these opponents actually ended up being part of arguably the biggest and fiercest rivalry that the Knicks were a part of in the 90s. Now, before I hop into this rivalry, I'm going to give you guys some context. For starters, on March 1st, 1991, Dave Checketts was named the team president for the New York Knicks. And in one of his first moves as the team president, he hired Pat Riley as the head coach for the New York Knicks before the 1992 season. And Pat Riley immediately turned New York into contenders in a very short time frame as he culminated an Eastern Conference championship in 1994 before they lost to Houston in the finals. Now, the Knicks were unable to get back to the finals the following season, and since they were unable to repeat a trip to the finals, Riley stepped down as the Knicks head coach. At the time, many speculated that he thought the Knicks were no longer a title threat or he wanted to move on, or he just wanted more power. Now, Riley was loved in NY, but his next move turned him into public enemy number one in the Big Apple as he decided to leave the Knicks to join the Heat as a team president and head coach. It was also reported that the Heat had been done a little bit of tampering and they had been trying to acquire Riley even when he was under contract with New York. And this seemed true as Miami was forced to give up a first round pick after they got Riley. And the worst part about this whole ordeal is that Riley told the Knicks he was resigning via fax. It was no surprise that when Pat Riley returned to Madison Square Garden for the first time, he received a treatment worthy of a person who flat out disrespected a franchise via fax. He faced boos, people were cursing at him, and everything you can think of rained down on Riley. But like the cool dude he's been throughout his coaching career, Pat took it all in stride and even invited the crowd to bring it. Now, as for Miami, they were an expansion team that was created in 1998. The team played its first season in the 88-89, and like every expansion team, they struggled. However, in the early 1990s, the Heat started to make strides in terms of competitiveness, led by players like Glenn Rice, Ronnie Sickley, and Sherman Douglas. The team improved its performance and became more competitive within the Eastern Conference. Then, when they acquired Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning, the Heat were looking like a tough team out in the East. Now, the Knicks acquired the other star from Charlotte, Larry Johnson, and he and Alonzo didn't have the best relationship in Charlotte, and this showed all throughout the rivalry. You see, years before they would face each other, the pair fought to be the top dog on a Charlotte Hornets squad, and the owner eventually ultimately picked Johnson as its leader. This led to a chip on Mourning's shoulder and was probably the deciding factor on his trade to the Heat. And all of these things happened before their first matchup in 1997. Now, in 1997, in only Riley's second season as Miami's head coach, the Heat dethroned New York as the Atlantic Division champions. This set up one of the most dramatic playoff series in NBA history when these teams met up in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Now, after 4 games in the series, the Knicks had a commanding 3-1 lead. How did this happen, you ask? Well, in game 1, the Knicks won 88-79 after Ewing dunked on Mourning to ice the win. In the very next game, it would be Jamal Mashburn's 3 that put game 2 out of reach and tied the series at 1 with an 88-84 victory. In game 3 in New York, Ewing went out and blocked a potential game-tying 3 from Tim Hardaway. Then he secured a loose ball. The Knicks will end up winning that 77-73. And in game 4, New York won 89-76 as they dominated Miami the entire way, and this gave them a 3-1 series lead. However, Game 5 would be nothing like the previous ones, and it would feature one of the most controversial and notable moments of this entire rivalry. And it all started with something as simple as fighting for position to grab a rebound. During Game 5 of the 1997 Eastern Conference Semifinals, Charlie Ward and PJ Brown got into a bit of a wrestle match in the paint. Soon after, Brown flipped Ward on the baseline Hardwood, and all hell broke loose. Patrick Ewing, Allen Houston, and Larry Johnson and John Starks had left the bench. This forced all of them to be suspended for Game 6 due to leaving the bench. Ward was suspended as well, and Brown was suspended for the rest of the series. At the time, it was a record for heavy postseason suspensions. New York was leading the series 3-1 at the time, but they would lose that Game 5. And due to being shorthanded, they lost Game 6 and Game 7, 95-90 and 101-90 respectively. The Heat would advance to face the Bulls in the conference finals, but of course they would lose in 5. After Game 7, Pat Riley would come out and say, "It's a great team over there that was dealt a very difficult hand. They probably hurt more than they've ever hurt in their lives because they really had the pieces this year. It's something they'll never stop talking about." Ewing was pretty pissed. "They robbed me," Ewing said after putting up 37 points and 17 rebounds in the Game 7 loss. "They robbed me of a great opportunity." Now, this was an intense series in itself, but as all of you know, this was only a tune-up for what was going to happen the very next year. Going into 98, everyone wanted a rematch, players and fans alike. And with the momentum from last year, Miami once again captured the Atlantic Division crown. New York would regress heavy though, largely due to Ewing suffering a severely broken wrist that forced him to sit out most of the season. And the Knicks were only able to attain the 7th seed in the East. With Chicago again gaining the number 1 seed, the Heat were paired against the Knicks in a rematch of their series the year before, and they got their rematch in the first round. Now, Miami would win Game 1 94-79, but the Knicks bounced back and won Game 2 96-86 to tie the series at 1. Kind of like last year, just different teams winning different games. Miami will follow this up with a win in Game 3 as they won 91-85 to take a 2-1 series lead. And just like last year around this time, Game 4 would be different than the ones prior. With a second to go in Game 4 at Madison Square Garden, the Knicks were about to even the series at 2 games apiece. But Mourning and Johnson got tangled up beneath the basket. Next thing you know, punches were thrown, and it all ended with Coach Jeff Van Gundy of the Knicks on the court hanging on to Mourning's leg. New York would win Game 4 90-85, but Mourning and Johnson were suspended the following game. In Game 5, without Mourning, the Knicks jumped out to a 20-point halftime lead. However, Miami chipped away at it in the 3rd and 4th quarters, and in the 4th, Tim Hardaway connected on a number of long and improbable threes. With over 6 minutes left, the Heat only trailed 72-70. With the momentum and the crowd behind them, the Heat seemed poised to take over New York. However, the Knicks retook momentum on a sequence consisting of a Ward 3-pointer, an Allen Houston jumper, and a free throw, and then a fast break layup by Charles Oakley on which he was fouled from behind and fell into the stands. This would end up being ruled a flagrant. The Knicks would shoot free throws and they retained possession. And on that extra possession, Starks would hit a 3 that extended the Knicks lead back up to 13. Miami wouldn't challenge New York the rest of the way as the Knicks won the series with a 98-81 victory in Miami the next game. And the 2-seeded Heat were devastated, and they would look to get their revenge next year. Now, the next year is the infamous lockout-shortened 1998-1999 season, and this season saw the Heat try to move past the previous year's playoff disappointment as MJ's retirement saw the Bulls fade as the NBA title threat that they were before. Now, Miami would beat the Pacers and Magic to reach the top of the Eastern Conference. The Knicks only got through the 50-game season with a 27-23 record, and they barely qualified for the playoffs as an 8 seed. Now, Miami 1 seed, Knicks 8 seed, I think we all know what that means. Not even a quirky lockout shortened season could keep these teams apart, and this began round 3 of what at this point was one of the best matchups in the entire league. With Miami being a 1 seed, this put the odds in Miami's favor, as an 8 seed had defeated a 1 seed in the first round just once in NBA history. However, the Knicks looked to defy expectations and make history. They started strong as they won Game 1 95-75 in Miami. The Heat came back with an 83-73 victory in Game 2 to tie the series at 1. Back home for Game 3, New York blew out Miami 97-73 to take a 2-1 series lead. The Knicks had a chance to clinch at home in Game 4 as they held an 8-point lead until Miami charged back to win 87-72 to take it to the limit once again. And just like 2 years ago, Game 5 was one for the edges. Now, for majority of the game, it was a defensive struggle all the way. During the deciding matchup, Miami was holding on to a slim 77-76 lead with only 4.5 seconds left to go. But then, Allen Houston hit a clutch teardrop shot that secured the surprising series win for the Knicks. It was a running one-hander that bounced off the front of the rim, off the backboard, and went in with 0.8 of a second left to give New York a 78-77 victory. And for that brief moment, all New Yorkers were in love with Houston. But the rest of the time, they just saw the guy as one of the worst free agency signings in NBA history. Now, after this, Allen would say it seemed like it hung for 2 minutes, not 2 seconds. It was the biggest shot ever for me. If we didn't get the bounce, we'd be talking about something totally different right now, he added. The win propelled an improbable run for the Knicks in the playoffs. They swept the Hawks in the semifinals and defeated the Pacers in 6 to clinch their second Eastern Conference title in 5 years, and they advanced to the 1999 NBA Finals, where they would lose to the Spurs. In doing that though, the Knicks became the first and only 8-seeded team in NBA history to reach the NBA Finals. It was such a devastating loss for the Heat, who at that time felt primed to make a push in the East post MJ. Now, going into 2000, the Heat were in a very interesting position. They had been beat the past 2 years by their biggest rivals, and their players were starting to get up there in age. Mourning was 30 and Hardwood was 34, and this seemed like one of their last chances to make a run to the championship. Same went for the Knicks, after their franchise star Patrick Ewing was 37, and Larry Johnson was 30 and a shell of his former self due to injuries. Now, once again, the Heat would win the Atlantic Division for the 4th year in a row, but the Knicks were right on their tail as they finished only 2 games back and captured the 3rd seed. And after both teams easily swept the opening round series, the two teams met once again in the Eastern Conference semifinals in what would be the most evenly matched of all 4 series. Now, players were talking crazy prior to the matchup. Former Knick Charles Oakley said Knicks in 7, as he was now with the Raptors after the Knicks finished off their first round sweep. That's just what I believe, he said. Knicks center Marcus Camby said, "They want us, we want them." It's the kind of thing where the Knicks and Miami meet every year. The games are so intense and so close, everyone's going to want to watch that series. The teams' alternated wins for the first 6 games were decided by margins of 4, 6, and 1, 8, and 2 points. One of the games actually went to overtime. The Heat would win Game 1 and take a 1-0 series lead, but New York would tie the series at 1, which seemed like a constant theme throughout this entire rivalry. Game 3 in New York was probably the most notable of this series. Ewing would hit a jumper with 2.4 seconds left to force OT. He also made 1 of 2 free throws in the final sections of OT to give New York a 76-75 lead. And on Miami's final possession, rookie Anthony Carter drove from the baseline and launched a tough and maybe illegal shot from behind the backboard. It dropped into the front of the rim and fell in with 2.1 seconds left to go. And after a referees conference, they ruled that it counted despite protests from the Knicks. It won the game for Miami 77-76, but the Knicks would win Game 4 on Charlie Ward's 21 points to tie the series at 2. Now, back in Miami for Game 5, the Heat came from behind with a sequence of threes in the final 2 minutes. D from Dan Marjolais and the last one from Bruce Bowen, and they would win 87-81. Miami had a chance to clinch the series in Game 6 at Madison Square Garden, but they blew a 45-30 halftime lead. New York cut it 2-6 in the first 3 minutes of the 3rd quarter. Ewing made a difficult tip dunk off a missed jump shot to cut this lead to 2 with 2 minutes left. Allen Houston hit 2 free throws with 22 seconds left to give the Knicks a 72-70 lead. Anthony Carter missed a 3 at the buzzer that would have won the series, and thus we were into Game 7. This was a phenomenal comeback by the Knicks. The Knicks outscored them by 17 points in the second half to pull off a dramatic win to force yet another winner advance game. After the game, Van Gundy says this was a great comeback. The only thing that makes it really memorable is if it leads to a series win. I told them at half, and we didn't speak for very long, that there were no adjustments to make. There was no nothing. We picked the most inopportune time to play the worst half we played all year. But I told them that they were going to be part of the best comeback in their playoff lives, and if they didn't believe it, they were told to stay in the locker room. And in yet another Game 7, the Heat actually would take a commanding 11-point lead in the first half, but the Knicks would end up rallying to make the game close in the final minutes. Tim Hardaway gave Miami an 82-81 lead when he drained a 3 with 1:32 left on the clock. The Knicks responded when Alonzo Mourning gambled and attempted a steal on Patrick Ewing. The move failed, of course, and this allowed Ewing an easy dunk. The Heat had a chance in the final seconds to retake the lead, but Clarence Witherspoon missed a jumper over Marcus Camby with 7 seconds left to go. This gave the Knicks another playoff series victory over Miami. Latrell Sprewell got the rebound for the Knicks, but at first he was ruled to have stepped out of bounds with 2 seconds later. But the referee, Dick Bavetta, overruled the call, and the Knicks won the game and the series, their third straight over the Heat. Angry Heat fans pelted the court with debris. That's why they call him Nick Bavetta, Hardaway said. It's not right. The Knicks would advance to the Eastern Conference Finals rematch with the Pacers, but this time Indiana won in 6 to advance to the 2000 NBA Finals, where, of course, they lost to the Lakers. And after this series, it was pretty much a wrap on the rivalry. The stars of both teams would eventually leave or be dealt away as both teams decided to go in different directions, and this marked the end of what was one of the most exciting rivalries in the 90s and NBA history. And when making this video and doing research, this was one hell of a rivalry. Probably not my favorite, but it was amazing. What is your favorite rivalry in the NBA though? Make sure you leave it down below in the comments, and if you like what you heard, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Make videos like this all the time. But till next time, peace.